Hey guys, this is Lenny with MoFi Distribution, and I'm here with James from Westworld, all the way in sunny or not so sunny
Raining,
England,
raining.
raining as usual. And we just did some training because MoFi is now bringing in the West Phono stages. And I was so impressed with not just the sound, but James himself. He kind of has a pro background like me and loves music. And I said, let me do an interview. And I was going to do one written, but I'm like, nah, we need to get this on video. So I'm going to now pass it off to James. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this industry, and just the general mojo of West.
Of West. Well, it's an interesting, nice speaking to you again.
Yeah.
We only sort of spoke last week, so it's really nice sort of like getting in touch with you again. It's really lovely. No, I mean with I suppose my background sort of in terms of music and everything. My music background started when I was really young, probably about 5 years old. My dad used to listen to quite a lot of Brazilian jazz. So it was really my dad and my aunt that introduced the whole family to music, like as we were growing up. I've got two sisters, two brothers, two sisters, and we were listening to a lot of Brazilian jazz and a lot of like country music. There's lots and lots of things, like people like sort of Glenn Campbell and that sort of stuff, James Taylor. So I suppose my introduction to music sort of started there when I was a really young kid. In fact, those albums that we were sort of listening to when I was like that age, I actually own them. So I took them out of the record collection and everything, and they're now mine. But that's really where it started, and I sort of knew as well from a really young age that I actually love jazz. I probably sort of like knew by the age of 6 that jazz was my thing. And so as I was sort of growing up, I would always sort of search out sort of like jazz records. And the very first album that I bought, I was 12 years old. There's a really great record shop not far from where I sort of like lived and everything. And I went in there, and they specialized in jazz and jazz funk and everything. And a lot of the sort of London jazz funk bands from the area used to sort of like congregate in this one record shop. Anyway, I went in there one Saturday and sort of said, I want this sort of like, I want Dexter Wansell's Voyager, which was a really heavy jazz fusion album. And I was only 12 when it came out, and I actually bought it, and I still play it today, and it's still probably my favorite album. Like really, I can honestly say it's way ahead of its time, and it still sounds absolutely brilliant today. Dexter Wansell Voyager on the Philadelphia Records label, brilliant,
I'll have
really.
to get it.
So that's really where I sort of like started. And I suppose as I was sort of growing up and everything, I sort of knew that I wanted to be in music because I sort of grew up in music and everything. Started playing guitar when I was about 8 years old. Started playing bass when I was sort of 15, and was always surrounded by musicians. My brother's a musician. He's got a studio in Glastonbury. Yeah, and you know,
It
you
gets in
can't.
your blood. There's nothing you can do. Once it gets you, it gets you.
Exactly. There is absolutely nothing you can do. I mean, my dad was saying to me, "Oh, why don't you become a mechanic?" Because he was a mechanic, and it's like, why? I've got this thing deep in my blood, and it's just impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So it was sort of like naturally, it was, I had to be in music. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into music straight away. So I worked in like a lot of people, a lot of musicians, and a lot of sort of like budding musicians and people that want to be sort of engineers. First thing that you do is get a job, and so I ended up working in shops. I worked in clothes shops and all sorts of things just to pay my way at home and everything. And then I ended up, would you believe, I actually ended up in the film industry by accident. So and that's really where I suppose my sound training really sort of like took off, because I worked for the BBC while I was in films and everything. So I did all of my audio engineering world was spent at the Beeb. And when the BBC were training engineers, they don't do that now. That course has like disappeared, because now what the BBC do is really they bring in, they sort of buy in engineers and all sorts of things. But I'm actually BBC trained, which was amazing. It's a fantastic experience, and I learned so much about sound like you wouldn't believe. What you learn at the Beeb is just incredible. It's really incredible. They teach you about cable technology, because cable technology, they were doing all of that back in the 1960s
Yeah.
and 70s. So, you know, a lot of what we understand, you know, what we know today about cabling and interconnects and that, and they already did all that, you know, they did all of that, you know. So that's me. Films, you know, I sort of like started off as a film in film industry as a sound recordist and a boom operator, you know, the guy that holds up a boom sort of thing, you know, with the microphone at one end. I was sort of doing all of that. So yeah, and worked on quite a few sort of like productions, all useless ones, you know, you can imagine. There are some that that you might know, like Scandal. Scandal was so I worked on Scandal and some of the Jim Henson stuff, the Muppet Show guy. So some of the Jim Henson sort of productions I worked on, and some cartoon sort of stuff. But yeah, you know, it's really varied. When you're working in the film industry, a lot of people think that you're just working on films. But I was actually working on, you know, things like Inspector Morse, which was, I don't know whether you have it in the States, but we had like this, it's like working on it's a Sherlock Holmes type of sort of story as a detective. So I did sort of like about sort of 50 weeks in total on Inspector Morse, I suppose. Yeah, so it's really good. Yeah, it's been good. And then after that it was music. You know, I sort of worked in music. Yeah.
And you got into jazz, right? Doing a lot of local
Yeah,
jazz stuff, like Herbie Hancock, I believe.
Yes, I've worked with all sorts of people. So when I sort of like when I started music, I actually worked for the Arts Council in the UK, Arts Council of England, and everything. And so I was working with all sorts of people like Eric Bibb, guitarist, really well known. And I think if you've, you know, if there's anyone out there,
I'm the head of the Eric Bibb Connected on Facebook. I used to import his music. I've done concert series with him. I know his wife. I've known both his
well,
wife,
there we
his children.
go. Yeah.
He's a
So you know
wonderful,
Eric.
wonderful
Yeah,
guy.
so
I'm a guitar player, and there's a local guitar maker in Nottingham named Stefan Sobel. Sobel Guitars. Yeah, Martin Simpson. And I brought one to his gig, and Eric said it was like playing a Steinway. But that guy is so excited to play music, man. You just put something in his hand,
exactly,
and there's no boundary between him and his instrument. And I love it. You know, he sings such uplifting music. I asked him one time, I said, "Do you do a lot of traditional blues?" He looked at me, he says, "I don't have a Dachshund on my trail. Might as well a hellhound."
He's a great guy. He's a lovely guy, isn't he?
Joyous man, and I sing joyous music. Guys out there, get Eric Bibb's music.
Definitely.
But you're right, man. Eric Bibb is the real deal. His dad, Leon. Do you know about him?
No, not at all. Not at all.
His dad is a famous folk singer in that Greenwich Village area called Leon Bibb, and he sang with Paul Robinson. That was his, you know, and Odetta used to babysit Eric, and his first guitar chords were taught by Bob Dylan, because he was a young kid when Bob Dylan was kind of starting out, and they were nurturing him in that folk scene. So he would come over, and him being young, and these guys are more established, would just hang out with Eric and teach him guitar chords. What a story. That is awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. So I sort of like worked with him, you know, every time he sort of like played gigs in the UK, when I was at the Arts Council, I'd sort of work with him and everything. So, and he's just a really lovely guy. But it's one of those things, you know, when you're working with somebody like that, when you're working with musicians that are so infectious and everything, you don't want to leave music. He's one of those guys where you just think, this is where I want to be for the rest of my life. You know, I just want to be here in that moment in time. And I've worked with a lot of musicians, but I can honestly say now, I haven't worked with that many that make me feel like that. Wynton Marsalis was one of them, where when I was working with Wynton's septet back in the 90s, and he had an amazing septet. That septet, I just wanted to be in that time forever. Believe me, I mean, it was amazing. I had a brilliant time with that septet. The music was amazing. And I think realistically, that was Wynton's best time. I mean, really, I mean, I don't think he's done anything as good as that since. And I think his brother, you know, Branford would probably agree with me. You know that.
Both those are good guys from New Orleans, and both of them have something similar to Eric: humility. They're aware of what went before them and after them.
Definitely.
And they're just in there. And they're humbled by, hey, look, I'm not Pops. I'm not Louis Armstrong. They're aware of that. You know, Eric's like, I'm no Sleepy John Estes. You know, I mean, these guys are aware of the roots, and they believe they're just pushing those roots, but they are not the creator of those roots, and they take that very seriously. So all these guys that you get along with and are inspired have one thing in common: humility. They're
Humility.
really humble.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I like that. I
Yeah,
find that with you as well, is that you have this great breadth of background from film to music, and you have a humility with your products. You don't make them flashier than they need to be.
no,
You know, it's about the music, and you get down to it.
it
And
is.
we were talking, you were talking about, and I do the same thing when I design. I think of my customers' money. I'm
Yeah,
spending their money.
yeah,
So I have to understand the dollars and cents with building it. And
yes,
the end result is Sonics. That's where the most dollars and cents. And I
yeah.
see that in your products. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so important because the fact that I'm a customer as well. I mean, I've got a lot of gear that I've bought over the years and everything, but also, you know, like with all of my recording equipment and everything, I am a customer, so I need to sort of look at that side of things as well. You know, I need to look at, you know, when I'm buying something, I'm not a multi-billionaire or anything, and I need to make sure that what I'm purchasing is really great value for money and it's going to last a long, long time. And so you know, when I'm like, I use ATC loudspeakers when I'm designing product, and I've been using ATCs for years. I mean, absolutely years, because the BBC use them, and that's really where I was introduced to the ATC sound and everything. But with ATCs, they give you this sort of like really great quality. You know, like you'll find 25-year-old, 30-year-old ATCs out there still being used today by
Yeah.
Pink Floyd and all of those guys. And that's what I want from my product. So I, you know, when I sort of go about designing products, when I'm designing everything, actually, when I'm, you know, because I sometimes design for other companies as well, so in the pro audio world and everything. But when I'm designing product, one of the first things that I sort of do is look at my voltage rails, because yeah, we're going to go a bit technical now, but just
Good.
as a, so when I'm sort of like looking at voltage rails, you know, I design using quite high voltage, you know, 24 volts and that sort of thing. So all of my components, capacitors, things like that, I normally sort of spec capacitors at 63 volts minimum and those sort of things. And it allows the products that, you know, all of my product range, the whole West Audio product range and everything, to be sort of like totally under stressed when you power them up. So we, you know, currently I give a sort of like 5-year warranty with all of my products. I can give a 7, I could actually give a 10-year warranty. I've got products, prototyped products that I've been playing around with for the last 15 years that I haven't switched off. You know, they've been on for 15 years. And it's that type of thing. It's really, really important to have, you know, like if you're going to design something, to design it so that it doesn't break down, you know, like, because the last thing that you want is like to be in the middle of listening to something and suddenly it just blows up or one channel disappears and that sort of thing. So yeah, so, you know, it's really important, like to think about the consumer, the end, you know, the end user, when you're designing product and everything. And I do that all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the characteristics of your I'm listening to the 2.2 now, your entry
Oh yeah,
level
that's right.
Phono
Yeah.
stage, which I'm just in love with. It has such a big organic sound,
Yeah.
but it doesn't do what I call image distortion, where the actual instruments are out of scale or
Yeah.
scale distortion. Everything has its proper scale. It's
Yeah.
just a large sound. There's a lot of
Yes.
air, but it's got straight, good straight edges for
Yeah.
delineation of
That's
instruments. So
from,
it's
yeah.
dense. It's just good air to it. And I started thinking when we were talking earlier how you fell in love with small signal. And the way
Yes.
I look at small signal designers, they're almost like building a Fabergé egg.
Yeah.
You know, it's so precise and so fragile. And if you get it right, though, it is a masterpiece. But a lot of people, that's why you don't see Fabergé eggs everywhere. It's hard to
That's right.
do.
Yeah.
You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? And you are a master at small signal. That seems to be a challenge. And that's what you build
Yeah.
from pro to
It
high
is, yeah.
FI, if I'm not
That's right. I
mistaken.
mean, I do sort of phono stages. Then that's the smallest signal, really, you know, in terms
Mhm.
of audio. And then I do microphone preamps because people come to me for mic preamps and everything because they know I specialize in small signal. The great thing, what I love about small signal, is that it's just a challenge. And it really is a challenge. You're dealing with something that's really, really tiny, that has to sort of travel all the way down, sort of like, you know, 1.5 meters worth of cable before it gets to be amplified, you know. And it is a challenge, but I love it. But I suppose one of the things about, you know, the advantage that I have is that I know what things are supposed to sound like. And so when you were talking about, you know, like the signal, you know, like sometimes you might listen to a phono stage or even a CD player, whatever, and, you know, like you get this whacking great big sound stage, voices are like 6 foot high and the guitar's like 20 foot tall, and that, that's really an issue. That's not good to have
No.
that, because what that tells you is that there's sort of like some serious phase issues with, going on within the circuitry. What's supposed to happen is that, like you're supposed to have a really clean sort of sound stage, back, front, left, right, and everything, and really stable imaging. It's so important that even in daytime, because you probably know some of your customers might turn around and sort of say, when I switch the lights off, I can sort of see all those images. You don't need to do that with a West Audio product, because in the daytime the images are so strong, you can say, there's that voice and there's that guitar, and I can hear that sort of triangle there. It's like, left of center and that sort of thing. And that's what you're supposed to have, like, and you're supposed to have it at all, any time of the day, and it's that. But that's what I love about designing.
You have a lot of flesh. There's meat on the bones. It's
not
an outline of a flat one-dimensional person playing. They're three-dimensional. I could walk up and shake their hand. Great density. And I've got that from other products. It's just how big it was from wall to wall, good depth. And MoFi has a one-step recording of Fragile from Yes, and it has great height. Roundabout has just this great height to it in this recording. Your stage really kept that intact. And small signal's interesting because there's so much more that can go wrong than right. And I can see why designers are like, give me a big fat amp to design it. Let me have some stable drive into a signal. That's great, and that's a challenge as well. I just find it very interesting that you took one of the most challenging design parameters, and that's what you limited yourself to. I'm going to build phono stages. I'm going to be an artisan. I'm going to be a master at it.
Well, look, I mean, I've done the sort of like the bigger sort of signals and everything in audio. In fact, when I finished music and everything, the reason I sort of like went from music to designing product and everything is because it's actually, and this is the first time I'm going to say it on national TV. So the reason was because of the fact that I wanted a family, and there was just no way that I was going to have a family if I was touring, because I was sort of touring the world. And so I was working in Australia for about 6 months, working in the sort of jazz world, whatever. And I sort of phoned up my girlfriend at the time and said, I'm actually going to give this up and I'm coming home. She wasn't really happy because we had actually broken up. But I sort of phoned her. Story. Yeah, exactly. But I sort of phoned her out and so I said, come back. So when I got back to London, and I sort of like, I sort of came out of the music industry, got back to London, and I was sort of like twiddling my thumbs thinking, what is it that I want to do? And I actually didn't have a plan. I literally gave up music, didn't have a plan. And I got this phone call saying, we heard that you can design power amplifiers. And I thought, how did you, I never designed a power amplifier in my life. I understood, amplification and everything else, but I didn't really know how to do a power amplifier. Not a really good one anyway. So I said yes, and anyway, so as you do, and so I ended up sort of like designing. I worked for a company called ECS in London, and designed their power amplifier, which got Editors Award at Hi-Fi. I think it was Hi-Fi World, and it got like a brilliant review in Hi-Fi News in the UK. And you can sort of like find it on the internet and everything. And that's my design. It's a big 250 watt per channel amplifier. And they came out with 2 monos as well and whatever, made by a company called ECS. And, they wanted me to sell the product as well. And I sort of said, no, I didn't want to sell it. But I just thought to myself, large signals are really good fun and everything. Doing a power amplifier was good fun. But I think what I really want to do is small, because it's really challenging. Small signals challenging, and I actually like challenging myself every day of the week. I love it, and so that's why small signal, and also because of the fact that I grew up with vinyl. I'm 54 years old, coming up to 55. We didn't have CD players back then, so vinyl, was it. And so I thought, well, what I want to do first is design a phono stage for myself. And so that's what I did. I designed a phono stage just for me. And that was my first phono stage, and it was actually the thing that Michael Fremmer reviewed back then. I
read that review.
And he actually,
and Art Dudley, I think, did.
That's right, and Art Dudley too. He did as well. And so with Michael Fremmer, actually, he's the guy that actually was responsible for making West Audio, because at that time West Audio was still quite small. You know, I was selling product in the UK, but when he reviewed it and turned around and said that phono stage is nearly as good as my Boulder 2008, that was it. You know, and that phono stage of mine only cost $1,200. No, in fact, back then it was like $2,000. The 2008 by Boulder was $20,000, and so you can see, you know, it just changed my course completely, changed my destiny, you know. And so we're here now, you know. I've got a whole range of product, and you know, people are knocking at my door every other minute of the day asking me if I can design another microphone preamp or whatever. And yeah, so it's, you know, it's been great. And then I've now gone back into music, you know, like West Audio runs itself now, and then I've, you know, now gone back into the music world again. Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. You can't get it away. You know, I was doing some contract negotiation before. I was in the audio business for a long time, and then went to law school, did that thing for a while. And I would do contracts with like companies like Intel. In the middle of contract, they say, any of you guys into hi-fi? I would, you know, I'm there sitting there wanting to talk about hi-fi. Once you get it, it doesn't matter what you do. You know, music is something that's everywhere. You walk into a grocery store, an elevator, I hear it everywhere. And that means I just want to hear it better. And I want the world. That's why I don't necessarily like the word high end, because high end is something that's expensive. You can have high end doorknobs. Hi-fi doesn't necessarily have to be expensive, but it tells you what it is. It's high fidelity. So I'm trying to, one of the things I want to do is make hi-fi more inclusive and not so exclusive. Over the years, it's kind of turning into kind of a rich man's toy. And I don't want that. Music is not that. And that's one of the things. $2,000 is not by any means an inexpensive product. But for the level of performance that you can keep this forever, the value quotient on that too is just off the charts. And you can give somebody a glimpse into something real, like an entry-level Ferrari is what I like to call it, you know? Something real that they can be proud of, that you built with passion, that you can actually call the designer, James, tell me about your product.
And like, exactly, people do.
Stradivarius, you know the designer, you built it. It's almost like a little child of yours. You know, it's history. You knew how it grew. You knew how it developed. You knew how it, you know, until it graduated and it was a product. And that's what I like about hi-fi is it's not a utilitarian thing. These are things built with passion. And I like to tell customers, because I've been doing this so long, that I've heard good tubes, bad tubes, good panels, bad panels, good horns, bad horns. It's not the technology. It's more to it than that. And one of the things I can say is my wife has been with me on this journey the whole time. Now we're stuck in the house together. We don't leave. So I'm listening to music all the time. And I was just listening to your stage over and over again. And she came in and she said this. Now, it may be a compliment. It may not be. I thought it was. She said, that's the best sounding CD I've ever heard. Is that a new format? And I'm like, no. It was so quiet. She couldn't tell it was vinyl, but she knew it was different. You know, in her world, she was like, what is that, a new CD? She called it, is that a SAPD? I'm like, no, not an SAPD.
Well, it's really, really interesting you say that, because most of you know, the people that have bought West Audio Phono stages, one of the things that they sort of like say is that, in fact, we've had dealers and, you know, distributors say the same thing, is it's like the first time they've ever heard stereo, because they've never heard vinyl do stereo. I mean, you know, like if you listen to other phono stages, you just get this wall of sound. Generally, it's just a wall of sound. Whereas with, you know, with even the 2.2 that you're listening to, the entry level one, what is it? It's $2,000. Yeah. You get a really great, you get the separation. You get everything in there. The only thing that you don't get, that the bigger ones will give you, is like the absolute sort of like resolution and textures of all of those instruments. But everything else you're getting, you know, like what vinyl should be giving you. Things like separation of instruments, a really great soundstage, left, right, you know, imaging and everything. Oh, you get everything with the 2.2, and it's just amazing. But everybody says that, and if you go to the website and look at the testimonial page that we've got on the website, it's incredible. People sort of like they can't wait. Sorry about that. But they can't. Hello. Yeah. So they can't wait to. Sorry. I knew this was going to happen.
It happens to me every time. So
does it really?
Usually I just throw it.
It's all right. It'll switch off soon. It'll switch off in a second. There we go. So so if you go to the testimonial site, people can't wait to put their idea, their reviews down, because that's what they are. They're like mini reviews. They mean so much more than a magazine review, because these are from real people that have like listened to other phono stages and ended up with the West Audio one. And and it's incredible. It's really, really incredible, that side of things. Yeah.
Your stage does something that I really like, and it's micro dynamics, I call it.
Yeah.
Everybody understands dynamics, the quiet, but there's dynamic shading, there's micro, there's about 1,000 different variations of dynamics.
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of velocity-based music, mandolin, things that have quick texture to it, or horns, that react quickly.
Yes, yeah.
It does so good in these micro. So I'm not just hearing a pick, I'm hearing, oh, that's a plastic pick, 3 millimeters. You can hear the density of the pick, especially on these small details. A lot of stages do big, bam. But you do just small, and that's that small signal that I'm talking about. You keep it so intact, you can almost feel the air of the pick as it's just digging through. I have a great recording of Evan Marshall, great mandolin player, playing William Tell Overture on mandolin, and you can hear each one of those individual strings resonate and decay and end, but quickly. It has such good leading edge transient that it's staggering. And I'm sure that has to do with your high rails and the high head rails.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So it's a combination of the sort of high voltage rail, so we are able to swing sort of swing voltage like really, really rapidly. But also it's to do with the fact that I don't design like anybody else. I mean, I'm quite different in that respect. Whereas when you look at a lot of other phono stage designs, they are pretty much all the same, where you have like a gain stage at the front, and then you've got like this passive filter stage in the middle, and then you've got an output stage. And I don't run my phono stages like that at all. I use my own sort of hybrid active phono filter stage, RAA filter stage. But also the output stages on all of our phono stages are fully discrete, which means you've got lots of current, and you've got and they can swing, current really, really rapidly. I mean, and you've got bags of it, but also they're both stages, front and back, are extremely low noise. And it's one of the reasons why you sort of say that you can hear the smaller parts of the mandolin. Like I've worked in folk for all of my life, apart from working with sort of like in jazz, I also do folk as well. And one of the things, so I've worked for like companies like Hyperion and whatever, recording classical music as well. And it's amazing, the textures that you get from some of these like early instruments and everything is just incredible. It's not like working with a massive Steinway, it's not like working with like a big fat guitar, a Sovereign, whatever. It's so different. And to understand those instruments and everything, it's everything. And like when I'm designing, I need to make sure that I can reproduce the sort of textures and the sort of details, that speed and everything of those instruments. And it's really good that you can hear it on yours. And I suppose are you using one of the MoFi tables?
Yeah, I'm using
with a moving magnet.
And I go between a Koetsu and a Mysonic cartridge right now on a acoustic arm. And I can almost forgive a lot of things in audio, but what I can't is scale distortion, dynamic distortion, anything that limits what I call trad, tone, rhythm, and dynamics. Because to me, the Brits call Pratt, the thing that makes you
they call it Pratt over here.
Yeah, and I call it trad. But the thing is I believe when you're auditioning a piece or you're connecting with your hi-fi, it's a roommate. You're bringing it into your home. It lives with you for a long period of time. When I listen to it, I feel like I'm having a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like a great conversation, we may start talking about music and end up talking about Glenn Campbell and end up talking about this. Many different that's the same thing with a great hi-fi. You start out listening to whatever, Cat Stevens, and you turn around and then there's Sneaky Pete and some Hawaiian.
Yeah,
You
so
look
yeah,
all over. There's album covers everywhere of all
everywhere.
different genres because one song had a steel guitar in it, and that made me
Yeah,
think
that's
of
right. And it
Eric
takes you
Bibb, and
elsewhere.
then Eric Bibb made me think of this.
Yeah,
That's a good conversation. A hi-fi is a good conversation. And like I said, a lot of people have had sound in their home, but not
yeah,
music. And music's inspirational. That's
yeah,
why you become a conversation. And just like people, I've met people on paper I should get along with, but they're boring. About 2 minutes in the conversation, I'm like, oh my God, is this an hour? And I've had people like, I'll never get along. And it's like 5 hours later, we're still
yeah,
talking. It seemed like 10 minutes. We're outside of an elevator,
yeah,
just
exactly. I've seen it.
it's almost metaphysical what I'm talking about, but
Yeah,
I connect to audio like that. The first thing I have to do with it before I buy it is I have to make it a friend. I
yeah,
have to say, I want to look at you. So the way it looks, the way it's built, all that's important. And I have to connect with it
yeah,
and connect with it in a way that I have to make it active to me and not passive to me. I
yeah,
don't want background music. As my friend Brad O'Toole said, there's a lot of background noise, very few upfront music.
yeah,
Music
definitely.
should be upfront in our lives.
Yeah,
And I believe it's so important. It's
yeah,
almost like museums in your home.
yeah,
Miles
yeah,
Davis is no longer there. All we have is his art. And when I put that down and I drop that needle, I'm hanging his art between my two speakers.
yeah, yeah,
Better the system, just like you're going at a museum. I can see the scale, I can see the colors, I can
yeah,
feel his emotion and magic. And I say these things, and people will listen to this, friends that haven't experienced that, and said, I've listened to music, it doesn't do that to me. But you've
yeah,
not listened to hi-fi. What you
yeah.
listen to is sound.
The sound.
And I'm
Yeah,
trying to get people to understand there really is a delineated difference between sound and recorded music played back.
yeah,
And as an industry, we need to do a better job because shows are less. And
yeah,
I do believe that these interviews and kind of humanizing what we do, that we're
mm,
a bunch of people that were professionals that could have done something else, but we are almost compelled by the forces of music itself to do this.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
I don't understand it, but the people that have gotten this bug can't get rid of it.
yeah. I
And
know.
there's a
Yeah,
reason. It's because we've connected to it. And I
yeah,
really think your products, especially the 2.2, is that entry level into something special. But
yeah,
kind of give us a little bit of the line that if someone started out with a 2.2,
yeah,
they can keep that forever. I'm buying
yeah,
mine. I may keep it there forever, but I'm probably going to go to a 40 because I'm just that
yeah,
type of guy.
yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
But this is the thing. I don't feel I need to go to a 40.
Yes. And that, I think that's one of the things. One of the reasons why I designed the 2.2. The 2.2 wasn't designed. It's not one of those money making things because that's not what I'm about. And I think, when you look at businesses generally, a lot of people sort of like, there are loads of businesses that just do it for the money. And you can tell the ones that are doing it for the money because they actually keep on changing their product range every 6 months or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do it for the money. I actually do it for the love of it. The amount of people that I know that I've touched, I've become friends with, like really good friends. I have phone conversations with clients and everything, like every day. Like I've got guys that have owned probably my first phono stage that are phoning me, and they're not phoning me to upgrade either. They've had the same phono stage for the last 15 years, and they're phoning me to find out how I'm doing, what's happening, da 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 da, but not about. It's not about I want to upgrade, and that's what I love. I can just have a normal conversation with these guys because I don't want to be talking to someone about forcing them to upgrade. If they love that system, there's no reason for them to upgrade, and it's as simple as that. And that's what the 2.2 gives you. It gives you like that passion. You want to listen to music, you just want to buy more vinyl, and that's what the 2.2 gives you. It gives you that whole thing. I just want to buy more vinyl. I just want to go through that collection of mine now and then just discover new things. I've got loads of guys actually that, loads of customers that have done just that. They've discovered other genres that they would never normally listen to. I mean, I listen to jazz, I listen to, electronica, I listen to folk and everything. I listen to everything. And people sort of like will phone me and say, oh, what are you listening to right now? And I'll tell them what I'm listening to. Like right now, I'm playing Esperanza Spalding's album.
Oh, that's great.
Chamber Music Society. You know, it's one of my faves. It's absolutely brilliant. And you know, I'm a bassist, a really crappy bassist. You know, I'm certainly not at her level, but brilliant recording, absolutely brilliant recording. And she's an amazing bassist, fantastic writer. You know, have you got that? Have you got
Yeah, I do.
Chamber Music?
Do you know Laura Love out of
Yeah, of
Seattle?
course. Yeah,
She does that great with Linda Tillery, that record that has Eric.
yeah.
Yeah, she's a funky bass player too.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, Tillery's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, so people come to me for all sorts of things. You know, they come to me to find out what I'm listening to, recommendations and everything, or they just might phone me just for the chat. You know, just really. And then other times, obviously, they're going to phone me and sort of say, "I'm thinking about changing my phono stage, or you know, upgrading and everything. And what do I recommend?" But it is just that. You know, it's the 2.2 is it's an entry level product, but it gives you that ability to enter a whole new world of music listening. You know, it's not sound anymore. It's actually, I want to listen to other things as well as what I normally listen to, and that's what it gives you. You know, and that's what it was designed for.
And that's what I'm talking about, the connection. They bought it, they became friends with it. So now they're transferring that friendship to you. That's why they're calling you. They've gotten that. And I get your thing now. A lot of people do them. You're giving them a big dose at the beginning. Hopefully they'll go, yeah, I know.
Exactly. It's that. It's giving them that dose.
Yeah.
Because the fact that once you understand, and it doesn't take long, you sort of plug the 2.2 in there, and that's it. You know, you get it instantly. You know, you get what it's about. You understand what vinyl's about as well, because there's so much on there. It's just incredible. I mean, you listen to some of the older Blue Note stuff, and you know, you'd listen to anything on vinyl, and suddenly you're able to hear what the engineer was thinking about, what the musicians were thinking about. I mean, I was listening to David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust not that long ago, and I actually love Mick Ronson's guitar playing. Yeah, Ronson's amazing. And it's not, Mick Ronson he's not about all of the sort of like the little things and whatever. He's not like a super, you know, like listening to Van Halen or something. It's what he doesn't play. He's a bit like listening to Miles Davis. He's like the Miles Davis of guitar playing, in that he just has to add those sprinkles of little bits and pieces, and it's just incredible.
He's a genius. Most people don't know that Mick Ronson worked with John Cougar on his first, and the hand claps on Jack and Diane is because of Mick Ronson.
Ah, that's a brilliant track. Yeah,
it needs that, and that made the song, and that's what you're talking about. It wasn't even a guitar. He just said it needs this celebration because it's about two young kids. And that's Mick Ronson, the genius, all the way from, you know, with his T-Rex, Mark Bolan.
Yeah.
The guy has his threads all the way through
everywhere.
And when you can stand apart as an entity and a musician itself next to Bowie, that says something.
That it's everything.
Cast a shadow that's yours, Bowie. And that man stood out.
Definitely. It's funny because the fact that Elton John, when Elton John was putting his band together, he actually approached Bowie and said, "Can I have Mick Ronson?" And Bowie just turned around and said, "No way." I mean, you know, why would you give someone like that away? And the thing is that Elton John knew what Bowie had in Ronson, because there aren't many Ronsons. I mean, I've worked with Jeff Beck. I mean, I worked with Jeff Beck years ago, and watching Jeff Beck play is incredible. You know, it's a real shame that I couldn't work with Ronson, because I would have loved to be able to sort of work with the guy, because he's classically trained. And although he's sort of classically trained and everything, it would have been amazing. But I tell you what, Jeff Beck, you want to be with him when he's like playing.
Oh yeah.
He is incredible. He's incredible, really. You know, there are guitarists out there that need all sorts of effects pedals and, you know, a massive effects board on the. He doesn't need any of it.
No.
You know, I mean, it's funny because when I was working with him, one of the first things that struck me was, you know Michael Hedges.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. On Windham Hill. Yeah, on Windham Hill. Michael Hedges, you know, I've sort of like seen him a couple of times and everything, and you know, he has a big effects board and all sorts of stuff and whatever, and he's a brilliant guitarist. Jeff Beck doesn't need any of it. He doesn't need any of it.
The way he can control that violining with his pink, it's effortless. I mean, other guys do it, just like everybody thinks of the voice box. Man, they're just go right to either Jeff Beck or Peter Frampton. That man was doing that eons before everybody.
Exactly.
You know, the thing about I know pro players that know Beck really well, and they're
Yeah,
saying he does not care if he messes up. He
he
doesn't
does.
care if he's doing a solo.
Yeah,
He thinks of something. He's on stage, totally bombs. He doesn't care. He
yeah,
just moves on.
he just plays
But
it.
he will. Then he's fearless, truthfully fearless, and the fact that he has nothing to prove. He
Yeah,
has nothing to prove on
I
stage.
know.
He just, if he wants to play slow, he'll play it slow. He'll pick out great bassists, young bassists.
Yeah,
Tao from
yeah,
Australia notices her. Just like we were talking about Bowie. Bowie had an exquisite ear for good players.
yeah,
Earl
he did.
Slick,
Yeah,
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Mick
yeah,
Ronson. This isn't
exactly,
by chance. You know,
exactly.
he
It is.
knew that's a player. I mean,
Yeah,
all his players were mind-blowing players,
yeah,
and
fantastic.
he had a weird sense to him because he knew what he wanted. But when he was talking about Nile Rodgers when
Yeah,
making Let's Dance, he just said, I want jazz chords, man.
yeah.
But it's like jazz chords, let's dance. Where do I put major seven? Where do I do? He did
Yeah,
it, but it's that funky stuff he did, and it was just, you know, I just love this. Music is an organic process, especially when
yeah,
you're making. You can see
yeah,
that
definitely.
somebody will just come up with something, or a mistake will bring you
Yeah,
somewhere, and I just love that. And you put it down on wax, and they may never get it again.
yeah,
I love to talk about Joe Walsh because I find him to be, the Forrest Gump of
yeah,
music.
yeah.
Because read his history, he kind of stumbles into weird stuff.
Stumbles. Yeah,
He's in England and he's talking to Jimmy Page and he's like, "Man, here, buy this guitar." Because he was playing a Telecaster coming from. He sold him his first Les Paul.
yeah,
Can you think of Jimmy Page without that Les Paul? That's Joe Walsh because of
yeah,
that. Then at the same time, Pete Townsend saying, I don't know. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm working on this new record. I just not working." He said, "You know what? You've played an SG through a high watt. Try
yeah,
this." A Gretsch country gentleman
yeah.
through a twin. That was who's next.
That's amazing.
All Joe Walsh.
Yeah,
You know, and that's what I like. I like this idea of these musicians making art. People think of it, the long hair and the crazy,
yeah,
but
yeah.
these are artists just like anybody else. They're
They
putting
are. They are.
heart, their blood,
Yeah,
their sweat, their tears in these songs. Because if it's a popular one, they're going to have to hear it for 30
yeah,
years. They're going
yeah,
to have to play it for 30 years. They
yeah.
better really like it. But but there was a great interview with Joe Walsh, and Joe Walsh said, "Oh no, what's wrong with today's music is nobody plays music. They're too scared. They
They're
sample
too scared.
something, they don't do it right. Because digital's easy. You can
Yeah.
record it 30
Hey,
times. It's not
look,
like tape.
that thing there behind me, that's
Yep.
digital. That's a digital. So I'm actually working on a production right now, and I'm sort of like in the middle of sort of like editing and all sorts of things. That is so easy to work with, and I can shift things around. Like if you listen to modern day music, the way it's put together, it's done like that on a computer, and you just shift things around. You can sort of like make things a bit longer, whatever. Back in the sort of like back in the early days, you didn't do that. You just play the blasted thing. You made a mistake, and it's just that.
But that's what he said the mojo was. The
Yeah,
mojo is the mistake. The beginning of Paranoid, when I was talking to Tony Iommi, I was playing it and he was like, "That's not right." I'm like,
yeah,
he goes, "No, I messed up." If
yeah,
you listen, yeah, he's like, "We kept
exactly.
it in there." But that mess up's there, and he doesn't play. He only plays it in that first bar. He
Yeah,
screws up and then he corrects. But he says, if you're gonna play it like me, you
yeah.
gotta mess up.
Ah, you're gonna. It's true. I mean, I did this fantastic recording for Winton at the Royal Albert Hall. In fact, it was a BBC thing, and I've actually got a two-channel version of it, mixed two-channel version here, and I think it's probably the only two-channel version that exists of this concert, and it's absolutely brilliant. But there are mistakes all through this thing. It's live at the Royal Albert Hall, and there are mistakes everywhere. Really, I mean, not loads and loads, but if you understand music, you'll hear bits and pieces. But I tell you what, it's the performance level, and it's just like the mistakes make it in a way. The mistakes are part of
Exactly.
that
That's what
whole
makes it
thing.
real.
Yeah, and it's a bit like eating a meal, and that there's some, it's fantastic and everything, but the plate's no good, or it was just thrown onto this thing and it splashes everywhere. But it's all part of it, or it's the wrong knife and fork, or it's that. It's
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And yeah, it's incredible to be part of that process as well. You know, it's amazing to be part of that whole process of putting music together, whatever. But the music thing is it's infectious. I mean, we could talk. I know that we can talk about music all day. You know, we can do that.
Well, we've been talking for 40 minutes. I got to wrap it up. But I'm just so happy to meet you. I'm so glad that we're going to be importing these stages. I just love them because they get to the music. It's built with passion. It's not just a regular product. There's a guy that makes them that's just a cool dude. Because you know what? Here's the thing. People can pretend they know about music. There's no pretending with you. No. You know, you play bass, and just like me, you're humble because I've met people that really can play, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Really that's my skill set. One time I was taking, do you know Robin Ford? He played with.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've seen him live. Yeah, in fact, I saw him with Steely Dan years ago.
Oh, yeah. See, I took lessons from him at his house in Ojai.
Wow.
And he was telling this story about when he was playing the first professional gig he had.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was Tony Levin and all these great players like Tedeschi, all these great studio players.
Yeah, of course.
And he didn't need to play anything. So he just kind of turned his volume down and just kind of acted. These two salts go to him afterwards and said, "You were perfect, man. Whatever you did, you sat right. He didn't play a thing."
Hey, you just have to listen to him on the Yellow Jackets albums. I mean, the guy's just brilliant. I mean, it's Robin Ford.
But he told me this. Yeah. He was working with Miles Davis, and Miles, he said, there were no rehearsals. That was Miles. If you have to rehearse, you're not in my band.
Yeah,
that's a Miles thing.
That's definitely.
But he stops him and he says, "I decided we're not going to play chords, only triads," and turns around and walks out. That's all he said. And Robin's like, "Not play chords." He says, "Hint at him, man. Hint at him."
Yeah. Ford's amazing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Just love that, man. Cool. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. I hope people will see this and get inspired. If not just for a West stage, just inspired to listen to more music. Go out and get
just to buy music.
Yeah, man. Because to me, it's all. This is a means to an end. I love the way it's built, and I like guys that build it, and it's my career. But at the end of the day, I'm a frustrated musician, and I feel like I'm getting close to the music and close to it.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you.
It's important to me.
Yeah. It's true.
It's true.
I mean, if you wanted to ask me anything about the product range, what would it be?
Me?
One question.
If it was your money and you had enough to go from 2.2 to Titan, but you wanted the best bang for your buck, 40 SE, I'm assuming.
Easily.
Yeah,
easily. In fact, the 40 special edition is fully discrete. It's all transistorized. There's none of this sort of like, transformer front end and all of that sort of stuff to get in the way. But the great thing about it is that not only is it used in the pro industry, because we've got companies, vinyl archiving companies that use the 40, because it's just so realistic in what it does. You don't need to go to the Titan. The 40, we've got guys running sort of like 50, 60,000 pound, phone turntables and everything, but we've also got guys running 6,000 pound turntables and 5,000 or 4,000, and we've got like a few LP12 users, Lin LP12 users using 40, because what the 40 will give you, even if you're running an old Riga turntable from 1978, the 40 will tell you exactly what that thing's doing, and that's the great thing about the 40. And in fact, I use a 40 at home. I don't use a Titan. I don't use it because the 40 is it's perfect. It really is. It's a fantastic phono stage. But that's really really my phono stage. I'm really proud of that one.
Yeah, but that's what I assumed. I looked at it kind of spec when we were talking. You had a glint in your eye for all the products, the 3, the 40.
Yeah.
You got to that 40 special edition. Your eyes lit up, and that's the one. It seems to be that's the sweet spot, and that's the one I'm saving up for. I got the 2.2.
Yeah, save up.
SE.
You're not getting a discount off me, so don't worry about it.
I didn't. If I just need somebody. So, but yeah, man, thank you. I hope we do good business together. I hope
I'm sure we will.
From bad phono. But if you ever need me, give me a call, and I'll definitely keep a call with you. And I'll may send you some rare Eric Bibb recordings.
Yeah, do. You must do.
I will. I have a recording. Do you know who John Cephas was?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I have a recording one time when John, we were at the International Guitar Seminars up in San Rafael at Dominican University, and he did great Skip James covers with that high.
Yeah, Skip's
He
brilliant.
was drinking a little bit. He was like 70 years old, but it was outside midnight under a tree, and that man sings Killing Floor Blues, and it was the spookiest, most real thing I'd ever heard
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
life. And that's what I'm saying. That spooky is the mojo. And
Yeah.
that's what I want people to get. That little box of yours is the mojo revealer, man. That's what I call it.
Lovely.
But
Lovely.
yeah, hey, thanks.
Thank
Keep
you.
doing what you're doing, and
Thank you. I
let's
will.
make music.
Definitely. Lenny,
Okay.
it's been lovely.
All right.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care, buddy.
Take care then. Bye. Bye.